Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to pre-order upcoming Force of Will sets, ccgprime.com for singles and supplies, cardodoko.com for those rulers in the international market looking for product, the Ruler School Circuit Series now taking orders on our Q3 2024 circuit kits, and our guest lecturer members, Fight Ramen. Class is in session.
Hey there everyone, welcome back to another tournament report with yours truly, Paul Reisman. Today we are taking a look at the most recent Converging Wills and a GP Milan deck list that we have here today. We were waiting on GP Milan to get this figured out, and I've been a little busy this past week, so we are catching up a little bit on tournament reports, so let's dig right in. So Converging Wills, we are on convergingwills.com. This is a really premier spot for folks who are doing online GPs, and we're going to just break down what happened at the recent Grand Prix back in September. We are looking at the ruler breakdown. Just ignore all of that. I'm not even sure what's going on there. But let's break things down. Most represented deck was Mujdart Gruz Ballesta, along with Milas Mujdart coming in second place here, tied with Odin and Glorious Masked Crusader. If you don't know who Glorious is, let's look them up real quick. This is Glorious Masked Crusader. You might have seen a little bit of a spoiler there as to what's going on with this ruler. As you can see here, discard a card with inheritance, draw a card. Doing this only during your turn and only once per turn, meaning you are going to cycle a bunch of cards with inheritance. You're probably not going to flip over into Faria very often. You're going to be using this to cycle around your inheritance cards. Let's see if we can find some cards that have inheritance. Just real quick, as you can see, a lot of cards from the most recent set have inheritance, including Thram's Pack of Hounds. This card is not being used, I don't think, very often, but we do have things like Sealed One-Eyed Dragon. We do have Remnithropos, Homo Titanophil, not really being used outside of that. Ray Aznable, very relevant card, has inheritance. All of our Chrono Gears also have inheritance, especially the Life Zapper Chrono Gear here. Very strong card, helps you to make a couple of dudes that drain a couple of points of life, which is really helpful. Making a bunch of dudes is really helpful in general, and this card is just, hey, I don't need it, I'm just going to cycle it away. Very helpful. World Tree Phoenix. There's a lot of really good cards that have inheritance at this point, so Glorious coming in here kind of makes a lot of sense. We also see Shiva, Providence of Nature, that's the Order ruler. A couple of Zacky lists, which is surprising to me because I have feelings about Zacky. I'm still trying to figure out how to build her, but we also have a couple of Lumia decks that have Flicker in Enter effects, a couple of Adine, a couple of Hanadas, a couple of Almerius Gruz Ballesta. So we're looking at a control version here. Wolfgang, Bianchi, Excalibur Genesis, which is just, Faria, flip Faria, make a bunch of heroes. One singular Mujdart, Araya, Nyarlathotep Order, one Misung, a Laika, Liberator of Wind, Ebony Prophet, a really good combination of Grim Rulers here alongside Little Red Riding Hood and Seer of the Blue Moon. Let's see how many of those actually convert, and the one that actually wins the whole tournament is one of two deck lists. So we are looking at Gruz Ballesta, Almerius here. Gruz Ballesta got a recently really huge buff. Let's just look him up really quick. So the recent Gruz Ballesta now has a buff, a small buff, in that if you Magic Stones call it by a J ruler you control, lose all abilities and gain tap, produce this will. They lose all abilities as they enter the field. That's incredibly important for things like your Ragnarok Stone. Ragnarok, very good stone. Ragnarok's Fiery Stone, really powerful card. But as you can see, if you don't control Ragnarok, this card will enter the field rested. Gruz Ballesta is going to blank those effects. So you get this really nice stone that allows you to call stones without tapping your rulers, meaning that you can just do a whole bunch of really fun stuff, even Judgment twice if you really need to. This is a multicolor stone, very easy to get right off the top, especially when Gruz Ballesta calls your first stone, and it's always going to be your Ragnarok stone because you get to choose. So we have things like Suya that are in the metagame. Suya is really powerful right now because the way Suya works is it comes into the field, your opponent banishes an entity they control. Why is that super important? Because we have the mask. The mask is super important right now. It's also the other reason why we're going to be seeing a lot of Glorious in this tournament. There's a lot of really interesting things this Mask can do. It has completely curbed the metagame. It's untouchable, meaning you can't interact with it on the chase. It has barrier to J resonators, except for in the case of Suya. Suya is going to make your opponent banish the card, so that's really important for getting around this little keyword here. It also taxes everything that is not a resonator, which is kind of insane and nutty. Very powerful card in that effect, but it also makes all of your activate abilities, it's going to make those activate abilities also cost 1 more. So things like Maribel that can pop Regalia is going to be actually, instead of 1 mana, it's going to be 2. This gets even better if you're playing Glorious, because your opponent is going to take all of the taxing and you are not. That's really, really important for Glorious decks going forward. This is a huge buff to those decks in particular. If you only have 1 ruler, which is what solo mode is, this does not count order rulers. It only counts rulers that are not order. If you only have solo mode, 1 ruler for solo mode, cards in all non-field areas lose all races. That includes things like treasures, which is what we saw a lot in the last meta. Things that rely really heavily on like Fairy Tale, the Fairy Tale race. Grim is going to have a really hard time playing against this card if it's too ubiquitous. But at the beginning of the game, you can just cheat this card in, and your opponent can't do anything about it, and neither can you. It just comes in, cancels all of the other abilities you control, and it draws you a card. This is really relevant because it does shut off your Rogue Shiva, but if you're asking me, this card is incredibly powerful, to the point where I don't really care if I don't have a Rogue or a Shiva. I'm fine just not having those cards available to me, and it is optional. I do believe this is not something you actually have to do. If it is, let me know down in the comment section down below, but just by the wording, it does seem like that might be the case. You might have to put it into the field, but you can also just filter it away with your mulligan. So this card is really, really flexible. It's really, really powerful against decks that would like to be more control decks in general, and that's why a lot of what the decks are in this format are going to be focusing on maybe trying to curb that or not. That's a little bit of foreshadowing for you, but Suya is there to help you kind of get around that. It's also there to nab a card from your opponent's hand. Really helpful. 4 Sword of Progress, 4 of the red wine and bread. This is your main your main ramp engine at this point in Gruz Ballesta decks. This card is very good for just getting cards into the field recovered, and so you have just more resources at that point. You don't get to draw a card when your J Ruler is destroyed, but I think that's totally fine. You have a lot of ways to make use of this card, including things like the Reincarnation Stone. Once it gets cycled, which you can with Gruz Ballesta, just tap and sack it. You can draw an additional card. Very, very good as a draw engine. A couple of laureates to siphon even further. Gruz Ballesta's Awakening. This card is very good. If you get 5 different colors, 5 different types of stones, this card is essentially free, and you get to throw stones at your opponent as 10/10 resonators. Very powerful. You have your 4 mirrors. Mirror is also a very powerful card this format. It's really kind of curving the metagame in its favor. Mask actually kind of makes this card feel kind of not really that great, but if you're not going to encounter a Mask, this card is really strong still. For Dark Alice Rabbit Princess, a couple of Electra to close out the game. This card is still very powerful. GST, just blank the field, one-sided skill drain. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. This just blanks your opponent's field, and you get to do whatever you want. It's kind of very fun for that. A couple of Loki's Insights to discard quick cast cards, very powerful if you know what cards you were trying to hit. Final Stance, you can dump this with your Rhea and bring it back with Almerius. That's a classic combo. Just take an extra turn. Probably one of the best turn skips ever printed in this game. A couple of Fair spells just for some utility stifling. A couple of Lumias to gain back life and remove things from the field. And Dante enters the Game of Gods. Your stones are going to correspond with what you have in the deck, especially Reincarnation Stone and Ragnarok. These are the most important stones. Everything else is just sort of in there to help you achieve very particular color combinations. In the side deck, we have Rogue Shiva. You're not playing Mask, so you can play this card. It's very helpful. And if you side into Shards for the Lian matchup or any graveyard-based strategy, this card will just yeet that right out of the game. Your opponent will not get access to those things. It's kind of devastating in that way. A couple of Therapists. Therapist is actually really powerful. Therapist is a card that we're not seeing a lot of. I actually have it pulled up right here. Expert Therapist. It's untouchable, which means you can't interact with it on the chase. It's got Protect, Barrier Chance. You're going to have a really hard time getting rid of this without a Resonator effect to get rid of it. Entities cannot be recovered by spells or abilities. Very powerful effect. Your opponent's not going to be able to abuse stones or anything like that. Cards in non-field areas also lose all races. This is your alternative to Mask if you're trying to blank things like Leon Treasures or things like Grim Fairy Tales. Players cannot play activate abilities of rulers or sub-rulers they control. Oh my gosh, this is going to shut down a lot of different things. This card will shut off Glorious, by the way, because that discard effect is an activate ability. You can destroy a phobia entity, not really relevant, but if you are playing solo mode, this card cannot be banished or removed from the game or expelled. This thing is staying on the field, and when you play your second spell this turn, your opponent gains 200 life. This is an Nadine effect. It's not really relevant to what we're doing here, but this card is very relevant in the sense that it can be used in a solo mode version. It can be used in tag rulers. It's just really solid for just blanking race-based strategies. That's a different page. We're going to be looking at that a little bit later, but we are playing a couple of Therapists. Flashing Smile, very strong card. It's a 2-drop, so it's going to get around things like Mirror, still very relevant in the metagame, so it's good to see that we have these. Witch of the Quench Fire to kind of shut down and help against burn strategies. We talked about Ice Shards, a couple of Muse, one of your armaments to help your Electra just give you some actual extra value, an additional Lore, and an additional Lumia. This is your top list. Very interesting, just really good Force of Will control. Not a lot going on there, basically just 5-color control as we've seen in the past. It really takes a good pilot to do this. So congratulations to Zhao for getting into first place. Second place goes to somebody named Dioma73. I have no idea who this person is. If you know, let us know down in the comment section down below. But this player was really, really good with Glorious, getting into second seed at the end of all things said and go. Actually, these are broken down by seeds. I actually don't remember who actually won this tournament. So this is first seed. Zhao gets first seed. DMO73 gets second seed at the end of all things here. What's going on here is we're using the mask package as we talked about before, and we're using things like Persephone, who at this point, I believe, if we look this up, they might have it figured out on Force of Wind here. I believe we have the updated text for this. Discard this card. We don't have the updated text, but this is technically reworded now to include inheritance. It is an inheritance effect. One thing we also need to note for this tournament is that there was a ruling made ahead of the tournament that cards that have that text where it says pay a will, discard this card, that was ruled to be considered an inheritance effect retroactively. So this deck actually has a lot of other inheritance abilities that it wouldn't normally have, with things like Girion. Girion does not normally have an inheritance effect, but for this tournament he did. That might affect the skills a little bit in this, but for the most part, this deck is still really powerful and really helpful in the metagame currently. As we mentioned before, Life Zapper Chrono Gear has a really strong inheritance ability, and some other things do too. One thing that Mr. DMO73 let me know is that his Dragons of Megiddo, even though they technically would have inheritance in this particular tournament, served him very little. So he actually took these out, and now he's playing Girl Staring At instead of these, and he's saying it's a lot better. Starfall is in here to generate Starfall Meteors, I believe is the actual token. Let me get the name of the token for you. This is Starfall. He's actually a pretty interesting card. He hasn't really had a home until now, but you can reveal this card from your hand to put a Meteorite Edition token with no attribute into the field, and when it gets banished, you draw an additional card, which is really helpful because you do have things like our Dark Alice to sack it to the graveyard, which is really helpful. But this is also really helpful when you want to protect your mask. So for one, or actually in this scenario it would be 2, because this is an activate ability. You would be for 2 putting a Meteorite token into the field, sacking it to the Suya effect that your opponent is trying to use to get rid of your mask, and then you would just draw a card, and your opponent is now sad because they also don't get any tokens on their Suya. There's a lot of really interesting interactive things going on here. Very complimentary card set overall. We are playing a Tenet of Asmodeus, mostly for the ability to ramp forward. and put a whole handful of cards into the RFG so you can play things like Replicant Odin. If you don't know what Replicant Odin does, you will now, because this card is absolutely bonkers. If you look at this card, if it enters after you've played Solarization with it, and your opponent controls 3 or more special magic stones, destroy all special magic stones your opponent controls. Might as well read destroy your opponent's stones. That's incredibly powerful. Just being able to say, we're on turn 5, we're both at 5 stones, except now only I'm at 5 stones and you are not. It's very powerful. It does have the ability to recover itself, which is really powerful too, because it does have 1500 attack, and it does have flying naturally as well as pierce. And then it can remove light and dark resonators from the game to either buff your board or neg your opponent's board. Very strong end boss card in general. That's very, very, very good. So this list was very tight. In the side deck, you did have your Shiva, an extra Kaguya, and some other stifling effects to be able to say, I'm definitely just going to win games 2 and 3, and I'm just going to discard things that I don't need anymore to look for things that I do need, and we're just going to keep going. There's a lot of inherent card draw present in here. 10 of it as Asmodeus, getting rid of things at the top of your deck to just kind of move you ahead. Very strong list from Mr. DMO73, who got 2nd seed, so congratulations to him for that. Milas Mujdart is still around. You would think that with all the mask running around, people would be off chance strategies or off activate ability burn strategies. They are not. We are seeing things like Lucifer and Life Zapper Chronogear continuing to do life loss shenanigans, and this deck has just picked up Zacky's new plan. This card, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it. This card is, theoretically very, very good, but it's very narrow in its applications to some degree. So you can expel a water card in your hand rather than play this card, pay this card's cost if it's not your turn. If it is not your turn, if you don't control a wind J/ruler, and the spell targets a non-resonator spell that was played without paying more than 2 will. It's a lot of restrictions. Very, very crazy. You can just do this. Most of the time you're using this to do the target a spell. Its controller expels it. Very powerful. And then it just shuffles itself back into the deck as it resolves. You're not really doing the foresee then draw a card, gain some clues effect in this version of the deck, but this card does have theoretically a lot of power behind it. In my experience though, this card has been kind of lackluster. I've not seen a lot of situations in which I have been personally targeted. I'm very curious to know whether or not this player used Zacky's new plan in that way. But either way, you're seeing a lot of life loss here. You are seeing Shadow-X come back into the deck as part of a way to create a whole bunch of neg abilities for your opponent to have to deal with. This is replacing Chivalry's Tears, which recently got the axe on the ban list, and then we're also having a little bit of a dragon package here to dump dragon, metal life form dragon, and sealed one-eyed dragon, and deal some additional burn damage. So this deck is really just, again, filtered into trying to burn your opponent out of the game. Nothing too crazy here, it's just slightly been updated. It does get to side high-speed uppercut, which is something we will take a look at here in just a second, but we also are playing Ice Shards and Therapist in the sideboard for additional support. We are also playing a couple of Suyas in the sideboard, 3 Suyas to be exact, and Electra, in case you are running up against some sort of masked deck. High Speed Uppercut is a card we do need to talk about a little bit. This is the Expel a Darkness card from your hand effect. You can choose one. You were probably going to choose this bottom effect here. Let's just read that a little bit more closely as we get into things here. Name a card in your opponent's graveyard or removed area. Search your opponent's deck, graveyard, hand, and or removed area for all of those cards, and your opponent expels them. If your opponent search, they shuffle. Pretty standard stuff here as we go forward. So this is just kind of like a zap stuff out of the game sort of effect. It has a lot of applications because you are playing a lot of your darkness cards in the deck. So you have several darkness cards, several darkness targets to make this available. There are things like Witch of the Quenched Fire that do give you a lot of trouble. So this card is really helpful for just getting rid of that. Moving down, we have the other Gruz Ballesta Almerius list, 100% conversion rate. This is an exact carbon copy of the last list that made first seed, so we're just not going to talk about that too much. We are moving on to an Order Shiva deck. We haven't seen Order Shiva really do all of that much in the metagame, but basically you are throwing stones at your opponent, at least from the last time I saw this deck being played. We do get to play Robometa. Let's look him up really quick. He is the new green win con that is going to be generically played across a variety of green decks. Quick cast, mythic, protect, eternal. You have a bunch of activated abilities that make you generally just very huge. Eventually you walk yourself up to a 1500 precision, pierce, bane, barrier. This thing is going to do a lot of damage. If it ever is able to hit the field, it's going to be really hard to get rid of because of that eternal keyword, so this thing is very, very powerful for green decks. To that end, you're not really seeing other stone throw based strategies. You are seeing things like Agni being played again, which is really interesting to see that this made it so far up in the list in general. But then you're also playing Rigveda. If you've not seen Rigveda, this card is kind of wild in the sense that there's no other card in the game that does what this card does. You can choose up to 3 spells and pay less if you are only using 1 of the effects, or pay 2 less if you're only using 2 of the effects, which is really interesting. I think that's actually backwards, but you know what I mean. You're paying less mana depending on how many effects you actually use. You can target a spell and cancel it. You can target an activate or automatic ability and cancel it. Destroy target non-magic stone entity. That's everything that's not a magic stone. Very helpful. If you choose all 3, you're paying the full cost, but if you only choose one of these, you're only paying a certain amount, which is really, really helpful. Very flexible modal card for what Shiva likes to do. There was a time in which we did think this card was a little too overtuned, but this is the first time Shiva's seen success in quite a while, so I'm not too sure of that argument anymore. Either way, you're looking at a pretty decent deck here. Just being able to just your basic green, red, black package, doing a lot of really good work. Being able to order out Electra is very powerful. Order out Robometa so you can have things canceled, or any of those sort of things that benefit you when playing Order. You do not get solo mode, so just be aware of that. This person did opt to side Dante. I'm not sure what's going on there. You can play Dante. That's all I'm going to say. So congratulations to them for getting into, I think it was 5th seed with this. Gruz Ballesta Mujdart, the only version in the actual tournament itself. You're playing things like Scorpions and other rant materials like red, white, and bread to get yourself into the right position so that you can just throw stones at your opponent. Or in this case, it looks like they are definitely trying to just ramp ahead, out-resource the opponent, and make it so that the mask is not very needed. A lot of what we're seeing in this is that people are not playing mask, they are trying to play around mask, hence why we're seeing Suya's main boarded, institutes, ramp packaging, all of these other things, all of these cards that help you to get more stones, in which you can sack with Gruz Ballesta and get permanent stones. Very helpful for getting around maybe that mask that is just giving you a lot of trouble. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that strategy though. Instead of playing mask yourself, trying to get around mask. Interesting strategy, interesting thought process. We're not seeing a lot of players actually using it. So far, only Mr. DMO73 was playing that in the top cut. Either way, this is just a basic control list. Outside of that, it's not doing a whole lot of different things. It is just trying to muscle out more magic stones to make it so that mask doesn't hurt too much. I guess I didn't read that right. There are 2 very similar lists. They're playing Look of Corruption, Suyas, Duet of Darkness, main boarding high speed, uppercut. Interesting choice here to just say game 1, I'm going to zap things out of the game. You are playing a little bit of a witch package, so you can just flood the field with your Witch of the Fallen Kingdoms, going into Pumpkin Witch for game under Institute. That's really powerful, as it always has been. And there is another option for you to just play Awaken and Gruz Ballesta, throw stones at your opponent, and call it a day. They are playing 3 rag stones, which seems like a lot. You might only want 2, but we'll have to see how they felt. Shunpo, by the way, Shunpo, friend of the channel, love you, buddy. Played 3. Really interesting here. There's a lot of really interesting things going on with this list. So congratulations, buddy, for getting into the 7th seed. And I believe he, in the finals, got passed down an invite, so he is going to Worlds in just a few weeks. Breadnon is here in 8th seed, 8th and final seed, playing the one Sherry Abdul list that is really doing some interesting things here, playing Lila's alongside your Rabbit Princesses to just ramp you a couple stones, which is really helpful. Draw 2 ramp. Playing some other things like a Borozuki to dig deeper into the deck. Blessing. I don't remember the full name of this, so I'm going to look it up real quick with y'all. Roar of Dark Blessing, that's the name. Remove X darkness cards in your hand from the game rather than play as cards cost. Your opponent removes X cards in their hand from the game. Very helpful, especially if you're trying to feed into Replicant Odin or even Replicant Dante here. Very helpful for that. Playing Linosfaria, not sure how they're getting that out super quickly, unless they're just paying full cost for it. I'm looking through this list and I'm not entirely sure what's going on there or how they're getting that out, but they are playing Linosfaria. Very cool. We're also seeing Ultra Magic Stone Golem come back into the metagame in a very big way because of the Gruz Ballesta change. Despite the fact that this deck is not using Gruz Ballesta, it is using a variety of different magic stones. Hellfire of the Demonic World. This might actually see some... We'll just look up Hellfire here really quick for you all. This might actually see some play going into sideboards in the future. J resonates with Eternal and Barrier. Your opponent controls lose Eternal and Barrier until end of turn, and then they are dealt 10 damage. Can be a really good way of just getting rid of a Robometa that is trying to be on the field, and you're just like, nah, they're just gonna get rid of that. Just get that right out of here. Your sideboard's going to have some necessary pieces, including your Witch package, your Rogue, your Rogue Shiva package, your Pumpkin Witch. You are playing your Shahryar because you are playing Scheherazade, and then some other stifles and removal, as well as one Mirage Spirit. So congratulations to everyone who was able to make it into the top cut. I don't remember the actual winner of this tournament, but wow, what a time. Let's see if we update this, if we actually got the top cut. We don't. Okay, so that's unfortunate. But if you guys check out Converging Wills, really good website for forcible content, especially for online GPs and stuff like that. And let's move on then to Milan, which happened this past weekend. Thanks to Alejandro for getting this list up and going. We are looking at 41 participants, which is what I think that says in Italian. And then I'm not entirely sure I think these might be the winners. I'm not entirely sure. But we did have 18 different rulers. This is your breakdown. We had 4 Gruz Ballesta Mujdart, 4 Milos Mujdart, 3 Alex Sansta. We'll have to see. I don't think these converted too much, and I'm wondering if this turned, if this was just your Throm package going on. I'm not entirely sure. Almira's Gruz Ballesta was also at 3 Aristella and Little Red Riding Hood for your red Aristella package. Astema Belial, because of Belial did get an errata, and so he is back off the ban list now. And he's a little bit more fair. We also had some Gloriouses and some Lumia the Fated Rebirth doing some very similar things that we saw before. Alice Tales of Creation and Excalibur Faria also making an appearance here. So we are seeing some aggro, which is really interesting. Leon is actually here too, and I believe we're actually going to see some Leons in the top cut, which is interesting given the amount of therapists and masks that are present in the metagame. Again, this is your meta breakdown. There's some things here. This is something that will be linked down in the description for you, but these are some interesting rulers that I have in my head, and one of them, of course, is Sword Faria. So you're seeing a lot of interesting things going on in the same headspace that we're seeing here. But Therapist, really important. Scale, even if it's not on your sideboard, it's curbing the way we build stone decks. And then of course we're playing Mask. Maybe Mask is strangely absent from a lot of these lists. It's kind of like the boogeyman of the format, even though it's not there. Putting emphasis on boogeyman aspects, right? So if we look into the top cut, the victor was Jonathan Deward. I'm assuming this is last name first. Looking at a Milas Mujdart finish, we're looking at the Hounds here. Hounds are interesting in that Thram's Hounds are one of the new cards that we have as part of this. If you don't, whenever your opponent draws a card, they lose 300 life. Very powerful taxing effect. In fact, I think to some degree, this might be enough of a reason to run the card in general. It does have barrier, total cost 1 or less, and if you don't need it anymore, you can just, for whatever you need it to be, you can just sick it on somebody and it kills them with Bane. So it's really helpful for that. It also does feed high speed uppercut if you are playing that, but in this scenario they're not. It's just really good to be able to life loss your opponent and make them lose life every single turn. Of course, you are a couple of 6 sages, so you're going to be playing Welser. Welser is really good for pushing cards back into the hand. It's kind of like a Persephone before Persephone, very similar to Final Breeze, although Final Breeze doesn't have the torrent to just simply say, hey, you don't get to play cards this turn, you are silenced. In the sideboard, you are still seeing Rogue Shiva, you're seeing Last Movement, you're seeing 3 Suya to take care of other opposing masks, Genshi Tenshon, wow, I don't know what else to say. I love this card. I'm glad he's actually seeing a little bit of love. This card is actually really solid. If you played it with Solarization, this card can't be canceled. You get an additional will coin, and if you have a will coin in your item area, at the end of the turn you get to draw an additional card. Your fire sources deal additional damage. This card is kind of tailor-made for this deck to go a little bit farther in terms of its applicability. So it's really cool to see him actually just see play, even if it is in the sideboard. There's just a lot of really good things going on in this list to make your opponent just say, ouch, burn damage. That hurts. Congratulations to the doer Jonathan for getting into going to Japan, if he doesn't have an invite already, but congratulations for winning the whole thing. We have Dennis Nasty, who is playing Mujdart Gruz Balesta. Again, we're kind of seeing a lot of Stone Ramp here. We're seeing main deck Suyas to take care of opposing masks, potentially. This card, though, I feel is gonna age really poorly. You can just play an additional card and make it so that the Suya isn't effective against what you're trying to get rid of. But you do get things in this list that I think are really good. You're seeing a classic Witch Institute package to kind of make it so that whatever you're playing, you're going to have a lot of really good diversity stones. You're going to be ramping with your red wine and bread and your scorpions, and so you're going to be seeing a lot of different names, and so Institute just going to buff your field in a really crazy way. Outside of that, there's not a lot of cool things going on here other than just control.deck, but the Institute and Witch, very classic take on 6 Sage control. Moving into third place is Ivan. Again, we're looking at Almerius Gruz Balesta. We're looking at Institute Control with some nice little text. You're playing Almerius, so you can play Rhea into Final Stance late in the game, so you can just close things out, which is really, really helpful. Not too much more else I want to say about that. Bailey Jonathan, again, burn deck, life loss. Are they playing the Thram? They are playing the Thram Hounds, and they're main decking the Genshi. Love that. Metal Helix, really interesting as well. Javier Taralba is playing the one Leon deck that made it into the top cut. We're looking at, I believe, if I know enough of my Latin root languages, this will be 5th place. Quentin Tarantino place right here. So Leon is here. I'm very fascinated. It is a sacrificial altar variant, so you are going to be able to put things into the field with your Witch Cube, getting your Witch from the deck, which will then allow you to flood the field. You can just sack things to your sacrificial altar, grab an Electra or a Sphinx and end the game. So for that reason, you need bodies. You're going to have Kikis to help you search for additional treasures and things like that. The deck still has legs, especially if you're able to main deck things like your random walks, which you will be able to find because you are making your deck thinner every single turn. I just think that's really, really interesting that we're still seeing success when you play things like random walk to get rid of that one mask. If you can get rid of mask, this deck is actually pretty darn good. So you have 6 answers. The way that all works out, and we're going to do some math here because I know that's what everyone is so excited about. If you play 6 answers and you're looking for one of these 6 answers in these 10 cards, you've got a 84% chance of finding those cards, which is, you know, pretty good odds, all things considered. And you are, I believe, additionally drawing in another card when you play this. I believe at the start of the turn, you actually are looking at another card. So you are, at the beginning of the game, draw a card. So really, if you do the math, it should be like this. So you're actually looking at an 87% chance, 88% chance of finding at least one answer to your opponent's mask, which is not bad odds at all. This mask is really going to shut you down. So having these decent odds of finding at least one of these answers to your opponent's mask seems to have really paid off for Javier. So congratulations for doing that, and congratulations for math being in your favor. We are playing another random walk in this sideboard. If you do the math on that, I believe you're just going to get even better. You're almost at a 92% chance of getting an answer. Very, very solid. Can't complain. We're then looking at Vanny Maxime. Again, we're looking at Burn. Where are the masks in this tournament? That's probably the biggest question I have at this point. Philip Kybjors is playing Mask, which is kind of crazy. But we are, as a solo ruler, we are seeing that we are going to be getting the Taoist. Let me get the right Taoist up on the field. This is the one that taxes and gets rid of something if you are in solo mode. Remove target non-Taoist resonator from the game. Very useful in general. It's untouchable. It's got first strike, barrier J resonator. So in a way, it's kind of like a mini Mask, but it actually has stats, so that's really helpful. Additional cost to play non-martial art, non-resonator spells, pay 1. Might as well say non-resonator spell at this point, because you're probably not playing Misung cards in general. And so as long as you don't have a Wind Ruler, that you get this. And this turn, only 2 strong belief abilities you control are applied, so the tax is actually relatively okay. In general, this is a really good way of making sure that your opponent doesn't get to do things under your mask, and you're just playing resonators. Because, like, why not? You can play an Electra and deal 16 to the board, swing for 16, and then at the end of the turn, because you swung, your Lumia will flicker it, dealing the last 16 to kill your opponent. This card is super game when played with Lumia. Then you have a lot of Olympians, things like Ares to cancel things. You have Hestia to deal what is essentially going to be 1,000 damage with her enter effect. Artemis is going to recover you a lot of stones. Persephone is going to pop you a lot of cards and just act as a stifle in hand. We love to see it. Lumia in general. Philip, congratulations for getting this deck as far as you did. This card is absolutely funny. It's also really funny when you play it with Replicant Shiva, because that's just going to come in and blow up everything again. It's very funny. So I love that. Jonathan Sinisi, again, playing Lian, somehow getting into the top cut, probably because there was just simply no mask being played. So this deck really just got away with it, and to some degree, with Random Walk, you get to do that. He is citing the star scale here, which is really, really cool. And other than that, I don't believe there's any other answer to mask in this deck. And I think what you're going to see is, with 11 cards available, that 92% drops to a even 74. Not that great, but also not awful. Not so terrible that you aren't having a good time. And I think the fact that mask doesn't show up very much in the top 8 also really benefits you. So I think he got away kind of lucky in a lot of ways, because there just wasn't a lot of mask to be played. Other than that, guys, let me know what you thought of Milan and the online GP for Converging Wills. I don't know what we're going to expect at Worlds. I really do wonder why people are not playing Mask. Mask just seems way too good. Jeremy and I were talking about this last night at Locals, and it just seems that Mask is way too good. But we'll see what people think. And until then, guys, this has been Paul. I'll see you after Worlds with another tournament report. Peace.